Stephen Breyer, who retired to be replaced by Jenny Brown Jackson, Biden's only Supreme Court pick, replacing one liberal with another, 6-3 to 6-3, has been asked whether he thinks there should be a retirement age for SCOTUS or term limits. Let's take a look.
Partisanship sometimes matters. There are also shared principles, that help maintain this remarkable democracy and make us one people under the rule of law.
It's a kind of miracle when you sit there and see all those people in front of you, people that are so different in what they think, and yet they've decided to help solve their major differences under law. And when the students get too cynical, I say, go look at what happens in countries that don't do that. And that's there. I can't take this around in my job. People have come to accept this Constitution, and they've come to accept the importance of a rule of law.
That was former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer on the importance of the rule of law. Justice Breyer, who was nominated to the court by President Clinton in 1994, served on the bench for 28 years before stepping down in 2022. He is out now with a new book entitled Reading the Constitution: Why I Chose Pragmatism, Not Textualism. And the former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer joins us now right here on Morning Joe. It's good to have you, sir.
Justice Breyer, thank you so much for being here. Tell us why this book is so important at this moment in U.S. history.
I think it's important because many Americans are discussing the court. Some approve it, many do not approve what it's been doing recently, and then they have reasons as to why they think it's doing what they don't like. One of them is they think it's politics, and I don't think it is. I think it plays a very minor role in politics, at least politics as it's ordinarily understood. Others think that they just like to do this way or that way, and that's not a very good explanation. Now, in 40 years on the bench, which I've had 28 on the Supreme Court, I've gotten more or less used to the basic job, which is to take words in a statute or the Constitution, words typically that don't explain themselves, and decide how they apply in the case or what they mean. Now, I think the thing that has changed over the last decade, over the last few years, is a method of deciding that has become very popular. And that's called textualism. And it's so attractive. It says all you do is read the words. Just read the words and do what they say. And this will be simple, clear, and it will stop judges from deciding what they think is good instead of the law. All right? Many believe that. I do not. And there is another more traditional way of looking at those words, and that is someone wrote them. What was their purpose? What are their consequences? How do they fit within the values that underlie this document? I still have it, the Constitution of the United States. And will they last, these interpretations, to the point where they make the lives of people in the United States better? That's what I call pragmatism, but it's much more complex than that. And so I want to explain to people what I've seen, not as a professor, not as a theory. Those professors do know those theories, but I've had some experience that they've not had. And that's the experience I want to write from. I want to tell you about this case, that case, the other case, and why that fits into a pattern, and why I think, rather than just blaming politics, lawyers and non-lawyers, people in the United States and others, should wake up, in my view, to what's going on with what sounds awfully academic, and it isn't, because it determines how those cases will come out and affect men and women in America.
The first thing that I would say to Justice Breyer is no one believes in textualism. No one believes in originalism. They're lying. They care about the consequences, and they know that the consequences are manifestly unjust. But they use the shifting interpretive theories they need to get the outcome they want, while also claiming that they're not picking and choosing. Go read Scalia on originalism. He says it was stupid. So really, it's the question isn't whether we should do originalism or a living constitution or what he's calling pragmatism or textualism or whatever. It is, do you want judges who care about humanity, justice, fairness, and the consequences of their decisions? Or do you want justices who are bought and paid for by oligarchs, who are there to deliver profits for the wealthy, to rein in the ability for wealth to do you want judges that will rein in the ability of wealth to dominate our society, or do you want justices that are going to encourage the domination of our society by the wealthy? That's all it is.
You know, it's such an extraordinarily important book right now, especially, as you said, for people, for Americans that look at court decisions, say, well, it's just political. You know, you can look at the makeup of any court. You can look at, I'm not shocked by Dobbs because of what Clarence Thomas, because of what Kavanaugh, because of Justice Kavanaugh, what they've said throughout most of their lives. And I think it brings up an important point. If we're going to have this debate and understand what really moves it, yes, sometimes politics enters into the hearts and the minds of men and they try to but this is the battle to win, isn't it? This is,
Yes.
it is the intellectual battle that has to be won.
It is a battle to win. And I think that it's not that the judges you name or other judges are just sitting there thinking, oh, well, I have a different point of view. If we're interested, in my opinion, of not running the risk of certain dangers to the republic that the founders set up, we don't want to run those risks. And therefore, I think the path, which not too many people outside the judiciary will see, but I see it and I want to explain it. The path called textualism is something that should be avoided. Simple? Simple? I'll tell you something. I just read an opinion. Where it was 63 pages long, sent 30 pages each side, and you know what it was about? It was about what the word "and" meant. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are others like that. And if you think they're simple, if you think the cases in the Supreme Court in the language are simple, so you can just go read them and see what they mean, I have a bridge in New York to sell you.
Exactly.
Justice, you're arguing for pragmatism in law and in reading of the law. And on the court, you were surrounded by a lot of justices who were strong originalists. How did you balance?
No, they weren't. Here is Berkeley's law school dean talking about originalism. Worse than nothing, the dangerous fallacy of originalism shows how fundamental these changes could be and focus on the bogus legal reasoning known as originalism, which plays a critical role in justifying the sudden sweeping assertion of judicial power. If you were an originalist, you know what you would say? The Supreme Court can't overturn laws because there's nothing in the Constitution that gives the Supreme Court the power to overturn laws. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the Supreme Court will be the supreme constitutional court. It doesn't make sense.
beliefs and their beliefs, and what is the right balance between textualism and pragmatism?
It's a very good question, because it is a question that Justice Nino Scalia, who was a good friend of mine, and I
Cowardly
would debate.
cuck.
And we would debate it usually before students. We went to Lubbock, Texas. I think there were about 1,000 students there. I was amazed. They must have thought it was a basketball game. But and we spoke about it. And because he very much is a textualist, has written that we should just follow the words basically and no more. And I would say to him, you know, life changes. And the values that are in the Constitution, they have to be adopted. So I said, you know, he's a very intelligent and very funny and amusing guy. So I said, George Washington didn't know about the internet. And he said, I knew that. And he said, but the problem between your system, it's like the two campers. I said, who are the two campers? And he said, one sees the other putting on some running shoes. Why? There's a bear in the camp. A bear in the camp. You can't outrun a bear. Yes, he says, but I can outrun you. And that's what Scalia says. He says, Stephen, you have
They're
a system.
already doing that. They already put on the running shoes, liberal. They already outran you. That's the funny thing, is like, oh yeah, you know, neither of us should have running shoes. So I guess we just let the bear eat both of us? We don't try to run? I don't understand how that analogy doesn't even make sense.
And you draw on a system because this system has been around since John Marshall, since the founders. I didn't make it up. But he says, it's too complicated. You're the only one who can work it. And I say, Nino, I don't think that's so. But if it were so, you have a system that will produce a constitution and a set of laws that no one will want.
Justice Breyer.
And that's what we already have. But here's the thing. They know that. Conservatives know that their opinions are unpopular. This is one of the most dangerous realizations that a conservative can make. There's two types of conservatives. I talk about them all the time. Evil and stupid. Stupid conservatives believe that their opinions are the majority, that they are the silent majority, that their opinions are popular. Everyone agrees with them. Evil conservatives know beyond the shadow of a doubt that their opinions are very unpopular, that more democracy will lead to less of their policies that they prefer being implemented. And the evil conservatives understand that they need to lean into the anti-democratic elements of the American system. They need to amplify the anti-democratic programs and veto points. And they need to use the American state to implement anti-democratically their will. And they have engaged. Why do you think they went after the judiciary? They went after the judiciary because all they have to do is win the Electoral College and a majority of senators. That's not a majority of the American voter. That's not a majority of the American people. That is a subcategory because of the idiocy of our founders thinking that Colorado and Wyoming should have the same amount of senators, or California and Rhode Island should have the same amount of senators. That idiocy gives them an anti-democratic angle to seize power. And that's what they've done. They know that it's unpopular, but they have the power of the state behind it and the trappings of the state. And they have the military and they have the police. What are you going to do about it? Hamas is a separatist label separating terrorists from Arabs, which is really a terrorist nation. What the fuck are you even trying to say, you illiterate? You need to go back to Google Translate, Hasbaran. Try again with Google Translate.
As you know, this country is on the edge of something historic happening in the court. And a lot of people don't pay attention to the court every day, but a lot of people of influence certainly do. And there's an element called pace of play that I would use that phrase to describe what might be going on here at the court. We had Nixon and the Watergate papers. We've had Bush Gore. Those decisions came down from the court fairly rapidly in terms of the court's usual pace. But now the court seems to be slowing down things, and slowing down things. Is there any rational explanation for the amount of time being taken to make these decisions?
Well, I don't have that experience that you described. I mean, in the 28 years, it's much more mechanical in the sense of taking cases or not than you have just described. My experience is when a case is ready.
You know, you got a Democrat when they resort to cursing you. LOL. You seem very boring. By the way, you're not even American. Why are you here? You try to get your hand out for some more bombs that you can't make yourself. God, I mean, the thing is, every Israeli, every Zionist in their heart knows that Israel will fall one day. Every single one of them understands that they're not going to be around for that long, that they're a footnote. They're just trying to make their country into a paragraph. They're just trying. They're hoping. They're praying. They think that if they bring in more and more weapons, and they commit more and more crimes, they will burn themselves into history. But we all know Israel will fall, just like the Crusader states, just like the many other colonial projects that are ruined and burning in the trash heap of history. Israel will fall. All it takes is for United States to stumble or have an opinion change, and half that country will be flying back to their real citizenship.
Comes there. Why do we take a case? We take a case because normally different judges, lower court judges, in different places have come to different conclusions about the same question of federal law. I can give you an example of a federal question that could be. Do you want an example?
Yeah.
Okay. This is not, I won't give it an American example. I'll give a French example because I read it in a French newspaper. Okay? And I'm teaching to the 5th grade, and I say, look at this example. What? A biology professor is traveling from Nantes to Paris to meet his class with a basket, and in that basket are 20 live snails. The conductor comes up, what's in the basket? He shows him. Do you have a ticket for the snails? He says, I need a ticket for the snails? That's ridiculous. He says, read the fare book. It says no animals on the train except in a basket, and if so, half fare. He says, that's applying to cats. That's dogs, maybe a rabbit. Certainly not a snail. You think a mosquito? Well, that's ridiculous. He says, is a snail an animal? Aha. Mm-hmm. And I put to the 5th grade class, what do you think? Do they have to pay the fare?
I think that guy owes 10 fares worth for the snails. I'm a textualist, chat.
They not have to pay the fare, and before you know it, they are fighting with each other like mad. What about a scorpion? What about, is it an animal? Okay, now I say you understand the job of the appellate judge. It might not be a snail, it might be bare arms, but that's the job, and the question is how you carry it out. And when mechanically the rules of procedure, when that case is before us and we decide to take it, 4 votes will take it. They then start to write briefs. Who? The parties, the government, the friends of this party, the friends of that party. And they're all called briefs. They're little documents. Do you know why they're called briefs?
Because they're not.
Yeah.
They're called briefs. Oh, boy.
Exactly. That's it. They're the least brief thing I've ever seen. All right, but we read them. And then we have an oral argument. Then we go into the conference. We discuss it. Nobody else is there. And people say what they think. And don't say, as you've learned, ha ha, I have a better argument than you. That will get you nowhere. Listen. That's what Senator Kennedy told me and the other staff members when I worked there in the Senate. Listen to what people who disagree with you say. And when you listen and discuss, you sometimes find agreement, some agreement. We can work with that. And we'll work with it and try to come closer
Liberals
to
are,
an agreement or compromise.
All I can say is that liberals are utterly incapable of confronting fascism. There's a reason why fascists are concerned about socialists and communists, because they know that we know what they are. If you went to the Nazis and say, what is the number one enemy of the Nazi party? Do you know what they would have said? Socialists and communists. They would not have said Jews. They would have said communists. They would have said socialists. They would have said leftists. They would not have said Jews. Going after the Jews was what they did after they had power and they could exercise their ideology. But they didn't consider Jews to be a threat because Jews were not an organized political force, even though they claimed that it was. That was the contradiction of Nazism. They knew their ideology was a lie.
And then we go out, the chief assigns, and we write an opinion, and we circulate it when it's ready, and people can add, if they want, concurrences, dissents, and finally everyone's exhausted or written, and they're finished, and the opinion comes out. That's it. And there isn't mucking around with dates, very little, very little. You can never say never about anything, but very, very little. It proceeds in the mechanical way.
Energy CC. This was astonishing. 63% of Nazi militants said their main enemy were communist/socialist. Why is anyone surprised by this? Marxists and communists were seen as the main enemy in 63% of the essays. Jews 18%, liberals, capitalists 8%, Catholics at 5%. A third of the essays showed no evidence of anti-Semitism. Half revealed some, and 13% seemed obsessed by it. Some 22% showed hatred for foreigners abroad, 15% for foreigners in Germany, 5% referred to a conspiracy between both. Almost all said they hated the Weimar Republic, 30% because it was run by Jews or other un-Germans, 19% because it was a multi-party system, 9% because it was Marxist, 3% because it was liberal capitalist, 23% because it was liberal or capitalist and Marxist, 6% because it was black and red. A slight majority believed their enemies could not be reached by reason and argument. 21% used terms excluding enemies from human or moral status, such as subhuman, rodents, murderers. 40% advocated war. 48% had engaged in violence, such as to imply sadism or masochism. I mean, who's surprised by this? Of course. All right. God. I mean, this is Ernest Thalmann. He was the leader of the German Communist Party.
Sie wissen wohl, was
Guess you know what comes next.
Ja.
Yeah.
Ein besseres Deutschland.
A better Germany.
Ein Deutschland ohne euch.
A Germany without you.
Das Wertvollste, was der Mensch besitzt, ist das Leben. Es wird ihm nur ein einziges Mal gegeben. Und benutzen soll er es so, dass er sterbend sagen kann, mein ganzes Leben, meine ganze Kraft habe ich dem Herrlichsten auf der Welt, dem Kampf für die Befreiung der Menschheit gewidmet.